Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today I'm gonna wrap up everything I read in May. My reading at the beginning of the month started off quite slow, but then it picked up throughout. So I actually ended up finishing more than I thought I would, which is fun, so we should probably just jump straight in. So first I read Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson, which is a mystery book, and it's the second book in the Ernest Cunningham series, I think it's called. The first book was Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. And in this one, we're following the same main character as in the first book, but in this one, he is on a mystery writer festival on this famous train running through Australia. And then, of course, on this journey, someone gets murdered. And we gotta figure out who has done it. I really enjoyed the first book in the series, and I especially liked the narrative voice. We have that kind of style where the writer of the book, like the main character, is speaking directly to us, and sometimes he will like break the fourth wall and stuff, and I just find that really fun to read and very engaging, and this is written in the same style, so it's no surprise that I really enjoyed it in this one as well. I also think the setting of this is great. We're on this fancy train running through Australia, and it's a real experience, and I like that there's this mystery writer festival because we have a lot of interesting characters in here, and obviously, like, nothing beats A Murder on a Train. It's just a classic. I also really like that the main character, who is a writer himself, he talks a lot about like golden age mysteries, and because of that, this sort of ends up having a little bit of that vibe as well, which I love. We do have quite a complicated mystery in here as well, which was very interesting and it kept me hooked. But I did notice that when I read the first book, I did, throughout reading that book, I kept theorizing about who had done certain things, like what had happened. Whereas in this one, I couldn't quite keep up with all of the little details. And that may just have been me, who was a little bit tired when I read this book. But we do have a lot of characters in here, and I got a little bit confused sometimes, and there was just a lot going on. I don't know if that was just me, who had like, I don't know, couldn't quite keep up, but it was a little bit complicated. There were a lot of people, and not all of them are like super well developed, so occasionally I got a little bit confused. It does also maybe feel a little bit slower paced than the first book, or like differently paced. I felt like the beginning went a little bit slow, but I think it's just because we have a lot of characters that we need to be introduced to and that need to be established, so it's probably just because of that. I do really like that we have all of these writers that we're following though, and there's so much intrigue between them, and there's like stuff in the publishing world, and like that makes for a really interesting backdrop. I think there's a lot of drama in here and a lot of intrigue. I think the first one is still my favorite, but I did really enjoy this one. I just really like the narrative style and like the voice of the main character. It's a lot of fun to read, and I like the humor in it. So this is a 3 out of 5 star read for me. I think if you liked the first book, you will like this because it's similar in like tone, and if you like that kind of style, you're probably gonna enjoy this one as well. If you didn't like the first one though, you're not gonna like this one either. Because it's just, if you don't like that kind of style, you're not gonna get on with this either. But I really enjoyed it, and it was just a lot of fun to read, and kind of exactly what I needed to read when I read it, because I just wanted something fun and a little funny, but also, I mean, there is murder in here, so there is some darkness to it as well. I hope there are more books to come in the series. I do know that there is one more. I feel like maybe it's a novella. I can't tell if it's like a full novel or not, but it's like Christmassy, so I might read that towards the end of the year. But I hope there's more than that as well, because I just really enjoy these books. Secondly, I picked up The Unworthy by Agustina Bazterrica, which is a horror dystopia type book. It's set in a world that's devastated and desolate, and we're following a woman who lives in this cloistered religious order, which is very strange and kind of violent, and she is one of the unworthy ones, and she dreams of becoming enlightened, which she doesn't really understand why she dreams of this, because no one really knows what happens when you become enlightened, and the enlightened are kept away from everyone else, and you don't really know what you do or get, but it's like where everyone wants to go because of the life of an unworthy is not great. And the story is all about her living life in this religious order, and then a stranger comes in there and this sort of changes everything. You might know that I love me a weird book, so it may not be a surprise that I really liked this one. I've read one other book by this author, Tender is the Flesh, which is a book that I think about all of the time. It really stuck with me. I don't know if I would really recommend it, but I thought it was great, for lack of a better word. It's very hard to describe. But I was excited to read something else by this author, and I really liked this one. It's very different, but I really liked it. There's something about the way this author writes that just really works for me. It's like some sort of mix of disturbing and emotional that just really gets to me. This is a pretty disturbing and dark and violent and brutal book in a lot of ways, but it also has interesting characters to it, and there are moments in between that really make you reflect. And at least to me, there's something about the way this author writes that makes me like take breaks from her books whenever I read them to sort of just think about them a little bit, because there's something about it that just burrows its way into my head. I don't really know how to describe it. I also just really like the sort of religious themes that we get to see in this book and getting to learn about this whole system, which was very interesting. Although this is the kind of book where we're seeing the story from the main character's perspective, and that is limited sort of because she doesn't know everything, and if she doesn't know, we don't get to know. But I think that works really well with these kinds of books, so I actually really enjoyed it, and it was interesting to follow her and sort of seeing her try to make sense of things. She is kind of unlikable in a way, though. She's a very interesting character to read about, and throughout the book you learn more about her and you sort of maybe gain a better understanding of why she is the way she is, but she is a little bit jarring sometimes, which I really like, but I know not everyone likes reading about those kinds of characters, but I feel like it fits really well within this world. This also just has a unique quality to it that I can't quite put my finger on, and it's one of those books that I know is not for everyone, but for the right reader, I think it's great. It actually, I'm always careful about comparing books to other books because I feel like that very often doesn't work, but it reminds me a little bit of I Who Have Never Known Men, which, like, it has some of the same things going on in it. We're following one perspective and we're following, like, the book is limited to that perspective, and we're also following a main character that's a little bit unlikable in a way, and it's the kind of book where you don't get answers to everything and you kind of have to be okay with that. And yeah, I think maybe if you like that one, you would like this one, but this is more brutal in some ways, and it's like probably a little bit more violent, I would say. I would say that this is a solid 4 out of 5 star read for me. I really liked it. I always feel weird saying that I like these kinds of books, but it made me think and I thought it was very interesting, which is why I like it. And now I want to read more from this author because so far I'm doing great with her books, and there's something about the writing that just really makes me think, so I would like to read everything that she's read. I would recommend this if you're interested. It's definitely like, it's not for everyone, but it is more manageable than Tender is the Flesh, I will say that. Although it doesn't take a lot to be more manageable than that, but yeah, if you want to try something from this author and you don't want to read Tender is the Flesh, maybe give this a go. After that, I wanted to read something a little less dark, so I picked up The Antiquity Affair by Lee Kelly and Jennifer Thorne. This is a historical fiction adventure, and it's set in 1907, and we're following two sisters who get involved in this like whole situation because their father is an esteemed archaeologist, and there's the secret society looking for a lost powerful relic, and they basically all get caught up in this whole thing and they have to try and find the relic before the bad people do. You know how it goes. If you watch this channel a lot, you might know that I'm always desperately looking for more adventure books for adults to read. And I love them, especially when they have an archaeology element to them. So I was very excited to pick this book up. I think one of you or a couple of you recommended this to me actually, so thank you. And I was super excited to read it, and it was kind of exactly what I wanted, and I really, really enjoyed it. With these kinds of books, what I'm looking for is just fun with a little bit of mystery and some adventure and maybe some puzzles. Like, that's what I want. And I felt like that's what this was. The action starts off pretty quickly, like it doesn't take long until we're whisked away in a couple of different directions, and I really enjoyed following these sisters and seeing them go on this adventure. I also actually really enjoyed reading about the characters in here. We're following these two sisters and they have alternating chapters throughout the book, and I really enjoyed reading both of them. They're quite different, but they're also similar enough that you get the sense that they're in the same family in a way. And I really liked that there is a little bit of like relationship dynamics and like family dynamics to delve into here as well. Like, that's another layer to the story. And then we do have a little bit of romance, which I really enjoyed. I like romance in these kinds of books because it's just like a side thing. It's not the main thing, but it's like on the side, and it's just like a fun little thing to read about. I think one of the reasons that I really ended up enjoying this is because it has more layers to it. Like, yes, we have this like mystery and adventure and archaeology, and we have a secret society, which is always fun. Like, we have those plot points, but we do also have these different relationship dynamics going on as well, and there's more going on with the characters, and having that sort of thing going on makes you feel a little bit more connected to the characters, I think, or at least I did. There are, of course, things in here that are a little bit convenient and sometimes a little bit silly, but I almost feel like that's a part of the charm with these kinds of books. Like, the point, for me at least, is to have fun and not think too much, and I don't want it to be too complicated. So I actually kind of like that because we just get to go along and have fun and go on this adventure. I also really like that we get to see different settings in here. A big portion of it is set in Egypt, but we also get to see New York and Paris, and there's a lot of nice like settings to see, which I really enjoyed. I do think you kind of have to take these kinds of books for what they are though, and to me this was just like fun and adventurous, and we have a little bit of mystery and romance, and it was just a very enjoyable read. I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and please, if anyone has any more recommendations like this, hit me up because I'm always looking for more. And whoever recommended this to me, I'm pretty sure there was more than one person, but like, thank you, because I really, really enjoyed it. And this is exactly, maybe not exactly, but it's pretty close to what I mean when I say I want like adventure books. Like, it was so much fun. Then I read a book that I borrowed from a friend. It's Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This is a romance book, and the story in here is about two writers who get invited to maybe get to write this book about this famous heiress who is from like a very famous family like of the 20th century, and she was like a tabloid princess, but then 20 years ago she disappeared from the public eye, and she's been quite difficult to find, but she's ready to tell her story. And basically we have two writers in here and she can't decide between the two, so she decides to have like a month-long trial with both of them, and she starts telling her story to them and like to see which writer she wants to go with. And so we're following these writers through this month, but then also this is a romance book, so of course the writers get to know each other, and I'm sure you can imagine what happens. This is, believe it or not, my 4th book from this author, which may be a little bit surprising because you may know I'm not the biggest romance reader, but I quite like Henry's books sometimes. They're very easy to read, and I've read 3, so 2 of them I quite liked, and then 1 I really didn't like, but they're very easy to read and just easy to get along with. So I was very excited about this book actually, because the other books that I've read by her are just straight up romance, whereas in this one we have a little bit more going on. We have like another layer with this heiress telling her story, and I think for me, usually when there's more going on, the romance works better for me because it's not the whole book. So I thought that maybe I could really get on with this one because there's more going on in it. I'd say that this book is like 50-50 romance and the heiress story, and in that story, the woman goes back into her past and we get to learn about her whole family history, and there are many scandals in this family, and we get to learn about I think, most of them. And so we get through her whole story throughout this book. And then in addition to that, we have these two writers who get to know each other and, you know, things happen. We do also have another layer to the story, which is that the main character has a sort of complicated relationship with her mother, which isn't a huge part of the book, but it is there. Now, despite what I thought when I went into this book, this didn't actually work as well for me as I thought it was going to. And actually, I feel like there's too much going on, and it just got a little bit muddled in a way. The story of the heiress is interesting, but it's like a little weirdly paced, and I felt like we spent a lot of time in areas of that story that I didn't find that interesting, and there are so many people in that story, and I got so confused about who was who. And I actually think that a family tree would have been very helpful because there's just a lot of people. Then we have the romance story, which Emily Henry is really good at writing tension. Like, there's a lot of tension between these people, and I really like the way she does that. But these people, they know each other for a month. And it goes so quickly. Like, it went so quickly that I could barely keep up. And I could not get along with, like, the epicness that is supposed to be this romantic relationship. Because it was so quick. And I couldn't get on board with where they ended up and, like, how epic it was supposed to be, because it was so quick. I also thought, unfortunately, that this book was incredibly predictable. It took me like 80 pages to clock what was going to happen with the heiress story and the romance. I mean, the romance is probably a little bit predictable anyway, but actually I was maybe surprised at how it ended a little bit, that relationship, because it just seemed way too fast. But for the most part, like, I understood or saw what was coming very early on. And I was a little bit disappointed in that because it's very similar to other things that I've read before. I think because we have all of these elements going on as well, we don't get as deep into the story as I wanted to get. And it just didn't quite work for me. Like, I did enjoy reading it because it's very easy to read and it's easy to get into, but I just was a little bit disappointed with the depth in a way, and I wish that there had been more surprises for me, at least. And strangely enough, I think I might enjoy Emily Henry more when it's just straight up romance. I don't know why, but I'm surprised by that. But yeah, I really thought this would work better for me, and it just did not. I will say the setting of this book is really good. It's set on this island, which I really loved reading about, so that gets like plus points for that. But yeah, very middling for me, this one. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 because I did enjoy it, but yeah, I just thought that this would be it for me with Emily Henry. Like, it was gonna be a 5 out of 5, and it just was not. Second to last, we actually have another romance book. I keep saying that I don't read a lot of romance, but I guess I do read a little bit of it, although this is very different than the Emily Henry book. It's a graphic novel. It's The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich by Deya Muniz. And this is set in the Kingdom of Fromage, which already we're on the right track. And we're following this main character who is a woman who cannot inherit because she's a woman, and so when her father passes away, she decides to move to the capital city and disguise herself as a man and live as Count Camembert. And it all seems to work very well, but then things get a little bit complicated when she gets to know this beautiful girl who is a princess called Princess Bree. You know what? This is exactly what I needed to read when I picked it up. I just wanted something sweet and light and fun, and this obviously sort of looks like that, and it is exactly like that. And I really, like, I knew I was gonna like this, but I was surprised by how much I loved this book. I always like these kinds of graphic novels, but I think the thing that really got to me with this one was the humor of it, and the way that the humor is portrayed in the way that the characters are drawn and in their expressions. Because the artist sort of plays around with it a little bit. I'll see if I can find like an example. At the bottom here, I don't know how well you can see it, but it really made me chuckle. And I like how the artist like played around with it and sort of leaned into these sometimes a little silly and ridiculous expressions, but it just, yeah, like here. It just really made me laugh and it made the book even better than I thought it was going to be. And I just loved it. It's maybe a weird thing to like fall so in love with, but it just, like, I actually laughed several times throughout this book. I also really like the story in this. I got very invested in it. And a thing that I really want to applaud this story for is the pacing. I think pacing graphic novels can be very difficult because you don't want them to be too long and you want it to be paced in a way where you don't feel like things are going too quickly or too slowly. And I feel like this was paced perfectly. Even though I read it in one sitting, it made total sense to me, and the romance, even though this book is not long, it actually does build up and it makes sense, like the pace of it, and I really, really like that. I feel like that's a separate art to be able to pace these kinds of things right, and this did it perfectly. I also just love that like all of the names for the people and the places are based on cheese. Like this is the kind of things that I find so funny. And I just like that it leaned into it. And actually, even though the color palette is very different and it has a different vibe to it, this gave me a little bit the same feeling as when I read Garlic and the Vampire, which is one of my favorite graphic novels. I'd say that that is perfect for fall, and this is perfect for like spring and summer based on the color palette. And I just loved it so much. It was like fun and light and not without depth because there is stuff going on in here, but it was just, honestly, it was perfect. I'm actually gonna give this 5 stars because I had such a good time with it. And I have no complaints, like at all. And I just loved every single page of this. And I honestly can't wait to reread it because I just loved it. I love the characters, I love the story. Even I love the romance and the cheese. Ugh, it was just excellent. And if you like graphic novels like this, I would really recommend it. It's probably not for everyone. It might be a little bit too silly for some people, but I like a little bit of silliness sometimes. And it was just so sweet. Now, please nobody ask me to define my reading taste because, like, what I give 5 stars, I feel like it's so all over the place, and what I read is really all over the place. Like I read this month, and then also this, and then my next book is like this, and it's just so all over the place, and it makes me laugh because whenever I meet new people and I tell them that I like to read, a common question that I get is like, "Oh, well, what do you like to read?" I like to read everything. Anything that's good, I want to give it a go, and like my favorite books are like all over genre wise, and sometimes I feel like it seems so nice to just like have a genre that you really like I read fantasy and that's all you read. It seems kind of nice, but yeah, I'm here wherever this is, and it just makes me laugh sometimes. Anyways, the last book that I picked up this month was Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata. This is a short story collection, and if you've read anything by this author, you won't be surprised to hear that it's kind of weird. And it's always hard to summarize short stories, but I feel like this collection is like a weird blend of everyday horror and humor, and it's very difficult to describe. Now, I already knew that I really liked this author. I've read Convenience Store Woman by her, and I loved it, and I know a lot of other people loved it as well. I've also read Earthlings, which I also loved, and I know other people didn't love as much. Or it's like, it's a split, like either you love that book or you hate it, but yeah, I was really excited to read this because she's quite an interesting author, I feel. I would say that this collection is also one of those that isn't for everyone. It veers into like horror and taboo things quite a lot, and I feel like a theme in these stories are that we're seeing societies where things that we think in our society are super disturbing are normal in the stories that we read about in here, and you're weird if you don't think it's normal. Like, it turns things upside down, which is really interesting to read about. An example of this is the title story, Life Ceremony, which, if you don't want to know anything that happens in these stories, spoiler alert, but the story is about like a ritual that people have after they have died, where other people come to a life ceremony to basically eat the deceased, and then they sort of take on the body's life force, and then they go and have sex to try to make babies with that life force. Sometimes they just eat and go home, but sometimes they don't. And so that's a thing that happens. There's also a story where it's normal to make people into like furniture after they die, and like lamps and rings and jewelry. Like, this is the vibe that we have going on in this. I don't know what it says about me that I thought these stories were really interesting. I think it's an interesting way of exploring certain kinds of things. And I think one of the reasons that it works really well for me in these kinds of stories is that it feels very everyday. And so what you're reading about is so normal to the characters in this, like, these stories, and it's just like an everyday thing, and that makes it both shocking and not shocking all at once. Now, I will say I didn't like all of the stories in here. I think I would say about half of them felt very forgettable to me, and to be honest, I can't remember most of the stories, but the ones that I did really like, I think is gonna stick with me for a long time, and I'm gonna think about for a long time. And it's always hard to rate short story collections because usually they are a mixed bag. So I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5. But I will say the stories that I liked, I really, really liked, and they definitely made me think. This isn't a collection for everyone. If you like weird, sort of horror-ish stuff, I would maybe recommend it. And I would say if you've read her other books, if you like Convenience Store Woman, you might not like this. But if you like Earthlings, there's a bigger chance that you would like it. I would say it's more similar to Earthlings than it is to Convenience Store Woman. But then I also feel like maybe Earthlings is like even more difficult to like. So yeah, I don't know. But I think if you like this author, it's worth giving a go. But there's a lot of weird stuff in this, I will say. Those were all the books that I read, though. Definitely a mix of all kinds of things this month, but that's just how it goes with me, apparently. Now, I would love to know what you all have been reading in these past few weeks and what you thought. And as always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!